Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I'm 18 years old and have been driving for about 6 months now. I know I don't look it. I'm short, baby-faced, and most people assume I'm still in high school. Back home in Peru, I live with my mom and help out however I can. I worked part-time for 2 years at my uncle's repair shop, saved every penny, and managed to buy myself a car. It's a Mercedes CLA 180, which I know sounds fancy, but I got it used for a decent price. Still, it's considered pretty upscale here, and I'm proud of it. It represents all those late nights and early mornings I put in. When the mandatory quarantine hit a few months ago, the streets became almost empty. It was eerie but also kind of peaceful. My mom needed groceries, and since there was barely any traffic, I figured it was the perfect time to drive myself to the supermarket instead of her going out. I pulled into the parking lot and found a spot easily. When I got out and locked the car, I noticed the place was quiet except for a few people waiting in line outside the entrance. Social distancing rules meant everyone had to queue up with space between them. I started walking toward the line when I heard someone call out to me. A woman who looked to be in her 40s was walking toward me. She had this stern expression on her face like a teacher about to scold a student. She asked me to stop for a moment, so I turned around and asked her politely if something was wrong. She wanted to know if I had come with an adult. I was confused about why she was asking me that, so I questioned why I would need to. Her eyes narrowed, and she looked past me at my car. Then she demanded to know why I was driving that car. I told her it was because I could. That answer didn't sit well with her at all. Her face turned red, and she snapped at me, calling me an unhappy brat and telling me to respect my elders. I didn't want trouble. The last thing I needed during quarantine was some confrontation in a parking lot, so I backed down and apologized to her. She stepped closer and asked me again why I was driving a car if I was a minor. I explained to her that I was of legal age and that I owned the car. She crossed her arms and shook her head like I just told her the most ridiculous lie. She said she didn't believe me and demanded that I give her the keys right now. She said she would hold on to them until my parents came to pick me up from the police station. I refused, telling her I wasn't going to give her my keys because I wasn't stupid. Before I could react, she lunged forward and started trying to dig through my jacket pockets. I pushed her away and asked her what she thought she was doing. That's when another man who'd been watching from the queue walked over. He told her to leave me alone. She snapped at him, telling him not to get involved and to mind his own business. The man warned her that if she didn't stop, he would have to call the police for attempted robbery. She looked absolutely furious now. Her face was bright red, and she was shaking. Then, to my complete shock, she pulled out her phone and dialed. I listened in disbelief as she told the police that a young minor was stealing her car, that he had taken her keys, and that he was trying to escape. She begged them to come help her. She'd just completely made up a story. She turned to me and said that now I would have to give her the keys or she would have me arrested. I decided to play along. If she wanted the police here, fine. I had nothing to hide. I told her that was no problem and that I would wait for the police to arrive. I even mentioned that I was hungry, just to show how unconcerned I was. She seemed taken aback that I wasn't running or panicking. She insisted that I should give her the keys right now and then everything would be resolved. I told her I preferred to wait. About 10 minutes passed. The helpful man stayed nearby, keeping an eye on both of us. Finally, a police car pulled into the parking lot and an officer stepped out. He asked if there was a problem. She immediately told him that I had stolen her keys and was trying to run away. I took a deep breath and explained that this was my car. I told him that she had tried to take my keys out of my pockets and had wanted to convince me to give her the keys before he arrived. The officer looked between us, clearly trying to assess the situation. He said there was only one thing that could solve this and asked me to take out the car papers and my license. I nodded and walked to my car. She tried to follow me, talking to the officer, probably spinning more lies. I grabbed my registration papers and my driver's license from the glove compartment and brought them back. The officer examined everything carefully. My license clearly showed my birth date. The registration had my name matching my license. Everything checked out. I could see her face going pale when the officer looked up at her and told her that the documents were legitimate. He confirmed that I was 18 years old and the registered owner of the vehicle. I was smiling on the inside but kept my face neutral. Then everything went crazy. She completely lost it. She screamed and lunged at me, her fist connecting with my cheek. I hadn't expected it at all and fell backward onto the pavement. I shouted, asking what was happening to her. She yelled back that I was a child and that it was impossible for me to have such an expensive car. Before the officer could grab her, she ran to my car and dragged her keys along the side, scratching a long line across the paint. That was my car that I'd worked so hard for. The officer moved fast, grabbing her arms and pulling them behind her back. He snapped handcuffs on her wrists while she kept screaming about how unfair everything was. The officer asked me if I wanted to press charges. I touched my face where she'd hit me. It was throbbing. I looked at the scratch on my car, all because this woman couldn't accept that someone who looked young could own something nice. I told him yes, I wanted to press charges. She was taken away in the police car, still yelling. The helpful man came over and asked if I was okay. I thanked him for stepping in earlier. He told me he'd be happy to be a witness if I needed one for court. I finally got my groceries, though my face hurt, and I kept thinking about the scratch on my car. When I got home, my mom was horrified when she saw my swollen cheek and heard what happened. She wanted to go down to the station herself, but I told her I'd handle it. Now I'm going through the legal process. My lawyer says we have a strong case with the assault, the attempted theft, and the property damage. All I wanted was to buy some groceries. Instead, I got attacked by someone who decided I didn't deserve what I'd worked for just because of how I look. The trial is coming up soon. Wish me luck. I've been with my boyfriend for some time, and we got engaged about a year and a half ago. We're both in our late 20s and early 30s, and planning this wedding has been one of the most exhausting experiences of my life. Not because of the usual stress, but because of everything we've had to deal with from our families. When he proposed, I was over the moon. We decided to have a longer engagement so we could plan everything properly and make sure all our family members could attend. My boyfriend has a sister who's the same age as me, and she's a doctor doing her residency in another country. Her exam schedule got completely messed up because of the pandemic, so we wanted to be extra careful about picking a date that wouldn't conflict with her exams. We settled on December 2024, thinking that would give everyone enough time to plan and wouldn't interfere with anything important. We booked the venue, paid the deposit, sent out save the dates to close family, and started planning everything else. Then, just recently, his sister contacted us with some concerning news. She told us that her exam might be scheduled around our wedding dates. Not on the actual wedding day, mind you, since we're getting married on a weekend, but possibly on the Friday before or the Monday after. She explained that she wanted us to change our entire wedding date to accommodate her situation. I was shocked. We'd already paid for the venue, already coordinated with vendors, already told people to save the date. But my boyfriend and I talked about it, and we decided to be accommodating. We agreed to move the wedding to mid-November instead. That way, she'd have the entire year to study and prepare, minus just our wedding weekend and maybe a couple of days for pre-wedding shopping and events. Plus, she'd still have 2 full weeks after our wedding to revise and get ready for her exams. His sister responded to our compromise with even more complaints. She said that we didn't consider her or her exams important enough. She argued that we didn't actually want her to attend the wedding because we weren't scheduling it for after her exams were completely over. She went to her mom and her aunts and told them that I specifically didn't care about her education and that I was being selfish. She insisted that we move the wedding to January instead. Her mom, my future mother-in-law, called my boyfriend after hearing from her daughter. She told him that we could get married whenever we wanted, but she and his sister wouldn't be attending if we didn't change the date again. I was furious. This is the same woman who has been micromanaging every aspect of my wedding since we got engaged. She's tried to get me to change my wedding outfit to match her taste. She's pushed me to alter my entire wedding theme and even the food menu because she doesn't like my choices. We have completely different styles, and she's made that clear by constantly suggesting I do things her way instead. She's also demanded that I add almost 10 of her friends to my guest list, people I've never even met. And now she was telling me that 2 weeks wasn't enough time for her to study. She'd had an entire year to prepare for these exams. If she couldn't take one weekend off for her own brother's wedding and still perform well, then maybe that said something about how she'd been preparing all along. What makes this even more ridiculous is that she's planning her own wedding for the end of next year. She doesn't want to share her wedding month with any of her cousins. If one of them wants to get married in November 2025, she won't get married in the same month. But somehow my entire wedding has to revolve around her schedule. My future mother-in-law explained to me that I needed to learn to compromise. She said that was what you do when you join a new family, and that none of this was his sister's fault because education was more important than weddings. My boyfriend and I have already compromised so much. We've dealt with both our families making demands, we've jumped through countless hoops, and we've even had to work through our own relationship issues to get to a place where we're happy together. We're both on the same page about this, and we're both exhausted. For context, we can't pick a date before mid-November or between mid-December and mid-January because of religious reasons. Both our families follow the same religion, so these restrictions apply to everyone. Our original date was in the second week of December, which worked perfectly within those guidelines. Moving it to mid-November already pushed things earlier than we wanted, but we did it to accommodate her. Technically, postponing the wedding one more month to January isn't impossible, but it's about principle at this point. We're tired of waiting. We're tired of being told that everyone else's needs matter more than ours. This is our wedding. The wedding is happening in our home country, where his sister actually lives. My boyfriend and I will be flying there from where we currently live, so it's not even like she has to travel far. We'll be the ones making the effort to go home. Our parents are each contributing 50% to the wedding costs, which we're grateful for, but that doesn't mean they get to control every decision. I should mention that up until this whole situation, my future mother-in-law has actually been wonderful to me. She's been kind, graceful, and welcoming. That's what makes this even more frustrating. I don't understand why she's suddenly taking her daughter's side so aggressively when we've already tried to compromise. Yesterday, I finally reached my breaking point. I told my boyfriend that I was done accommodating his sister's demands. I explained that if she couldn't handle taking one weekend off from studying when she had an entire year to prepare, then that was her problem, not ours. I also told him that I was removing all 10 of her friends from the guest list. They were her friends, not ours, and they didn't need to be at our wedding. My boyfriend agreed with everything I said. He called his mom and told her that the wedding date was set in stone. He explained that we were getting married in mid-November, and if they chose not to come, that was their decision. He also called his sister directly and told her that she needed to stop trying to make our wedding about her and her preferences. His sister reacted very badly to this conversation. She said I was entitled and selfish. She accused me of ruining her brother's life by turning him against his family. If they don't want to come to the wedding, that's their choice. We'll get married surrounded by people who actually care about us and support us, not people who think their schedules and preferences are more important than our happiness. I'd always been an animal person, grew up with pets my whole life, and my current cat meant the world to me. He's this tailless little maniac I call Goblin because he tears around the house like he's possessed. He's technically supposed to stay indoors, but he's crafty. The first time I met my neighbor was during move-in day. My parents had driven 3 hours to help me. Bless them, they're retired now and always looking for ways to help me out. We'd rented a moving truck and naturally we parked it right in front of my house to unload. There was this sidewalk there, but it literally went nowhere. It just dead-ended right there. Nobody used it for anything. My parents were hauling boxes when this woman stormed out of the house next door. She started screaming at them about how we were destroying the neighborhood and blocking public property. My dad tried to explain we'd only be a few minutes, but she wouldn't listen to a word he said. My mom, who once got thanked by a customer service representative just for being polite on the phone, tried her sweet routine to calm the situation down. Nothing worked. This woman went on and on for longer than we'd even been parked there. Eventually, my parents moved the truck down the street just to get her to shut up, and we had to haul everything twice as far in the summer heat. That was my introduction to her. But here's the thing that really got to me. She had this cat, this beautiful orange tabby that would come around every day. The first time I saw him, he just walked right up to me when I got home from work, meowing and rubbing against my legs. I'm a sucker for cats, so I pet him and he practically melted. This cat was starving for attention, and actual food too, from the looks of him. I started watching and I realized she barely took care of him. He was always outside, rain or shine. She never seemed to feed him properly because he was way too thin. The only time I saw her interact with him was when her grandkids came over on weekends, and those toddlers would chase him around and pull his tail while she just laughed. The cat was clearly terrified, so I started leaving food out on my back porch. He'd come by every evening, eat like he was starving, and let me give him some love. This went on for months. Then one day, disaster struck. Goblin got out. I have no idea how he managed it, but I came home from work and he was just gone. I panicked. I spent hours walking around the neighborhood calling for him, checking under cars, asking neighbors if they'd seen him. Finally, just before it got dark, I found him hiding under a bush 2 streets over. I was so relieved I almost cried. The next morning I was sitting on my couch with my coffee when I felt something bite my ankle. I looked down and saw a flea. Then another one. I checked Goblin and sure enough, he was covered in them. He must have picked them up while he was outside. I immediately got him treated and started the whole nightmare process of defleaing my house. But then I realized something. If Goblin got fleas from being outside for just a few hours, that outdoor cat next door definitely had them too. I felt terrible for the poor thing. He was already neglected, and now he was probably scratching himself to death. Despite everything, I decided to do the right thing and let my neighbor know. Maybe she'd actually take care of the problem. So the next day when I saw her car in the driveway, I walked over and knocked on her door. She opened it without saying a word, just gave me this nasty look. I started explaining that my cat had gotten outside briefly and picked up fleas, and since her cat was outdoors all the time, there was a good chance he had them too. I said I thought she'd want to know so she could treat him. She immediately went off on me. She started yelling about how I'd let my cat get infested with fleas and how irresponsible that was. Then she snapped that she kept her house spotless, unlike some people, so there was absolutely no way her cat had fleas. I tried to explain that wasn't really how fleas worked and that they came from outside, but she cut me off. She said she didn't need me telling her about her cat or her home and that I was the one with the problem, not me. I just sighed loudly and started walking back to my house. She kept yelling behind me about how irresponsible I was and how she'd never have such disgusting problems. I hadn't even been inside her house, but apparently she knew mine was filthy. For the next week, I watched that poor cat scratch himself constantly. There were spots where he'd scratched so much he was losing fur. It broke my heart. I wanted to help him so badly. I even bought flea medication and shampoo, thinking maybe I could grab him and treat him myself. But she'd started watching me like a hawk. Every time I came outside, she'd appear on her porch. If I even looked at the cat, she'd start screeching at me to leave her property alone. Then it hit me. There was another way to help him. Our landlord was this middle-aged guy who owned several properties in the area. He was pretty hands-off usually, but he had one major thing he was paranoid about: pests. When we'd signed our leases, he'd made it very clear that any sign of bed bugs, roaches, ticks, or fleas needed to be reported immediately. He didn't want infestations spreading between units. I also knew something else. I'd been outside one afternoon a few months back and I'd overheard my neighbor talking to a friend in her yard. She was bragging about how she was getting away without paying pit rent because the landlord didn't know about her cat. I remembered thinking it was stupid to brag about that outside where anyone could hear, but I'd minded my own business at the time. So I called up the landlord, I said I wanted to report a flea situation and explained that my cat had gotten out briefly and picked up fleas, which I'd already treated. But I said I wanted to let him know because my neighbor's cat had been scratching constantly, and he told us to report any pest issues immediately. There was a pause, and then he asked if my neighbor had a cat. I confirmed that, yes, she definitely had an orange tabby that was outdoors most of the time. There was this long silence on the other end. Then he said that she'd claimed she was allergic to cats, and that's why he'd replaced her carpeting last year. I said that was interesting because she definitely had a cat that I saw every single day. I could hear him getting angry. Apparently the carpet replacement had cost him thousands of dollars, and she'd insisted it was a medical necessity because of her severe cat allergy. And now he was finding out she'd not only lied to get free renovations, but she'd also been hiding a pet for over a year to avoid paying the monthly pet fee. He said he was scheduling an exterminator to come out and that he'd be there personally to oversee everything. A few days later, flyers got taped to both our doors announcing the date and time. Mine said the exterminator would come to inspect and treat for fleas. I'm sure hers said the same thing. The night before the appointment, I waited until late and quietly removed the flyer from her door. I figured if she didn't know they were coming, she wouldn't have time to hide the cat or clean up evidence. The next day was perfect. I made sure to be home and I positioned myself near my window with it cracked open so I could hear everything. The landlord arrived with the exterminator right on time. I heard him knock on her door. She asked what he was doing there, sounding annoyed. He explained that they'd notified her they'd be conducting a flea inspection and treatment today. She insisted she'd never gotten any notice and said he couldn't just barge into her home. He said they absolutely could with proper notice, which they'd provided, and asked her to step aside. She started going on about how this was outrageous and threatened to call her lawyer. He said she was welcome to call whoever she wanted, but they were coming in regardless. There was some more back and forth, but eventually, I heard the door open and footsteps going inside. I couldn't hear much of what was said in there, but I heard the landlord's voice getting louder at one point. After about 20 minutes, they came back outside. The landlord said they'd be discussing her lease agreement and that she should expect a call from him tomorrow. She protested that she hadn't done anything wrong. He said she'd lied about a medical condition to obtain expensive renovations and had been keeping an unauthorized pet to avoid paying rent, and that they'd definitely be talking about it. I was grinning so hard my face hurt. Over the next few months, things were tense next door. I'd see her leaving for work looking furious. She stopped coming outside when I was out. Then one day, I saw a moving truck pull up. She was moving out. Good riddance. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.